Hi, I'm Emerson Sklar. I'm the Chief Evangelist of Amazon Alexa, and I'm joined today by Bret Kinsella, the SVP responsible for AI platforms at TELUS. Bret, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us about what you do at TELUS.
So I've been there for about 2 years now. And if you look at TELUS, they were very early adopters of AI in the ML phase.
Sure.
And then in generative AI, we're very aggressive early on. And they made so much progress that some of their peers were asking them if they could use some of their technology, but they had never really deployed software technology like that before. So they asked me to come in. And what we did is we created platforms for AI. We have like AI gateways, so people can access hundreds of different models across different clouds, across different providers for maximum flexibility. And then also to identify some very specific applications utilizing Gen AI that could drive productivity, drive employee experience, improve customer experience.
And so you're creating these products not just for external customers, but then internal customers as well.
Yeah, in fact, a lot of what we do actually is we start internal, because if you think about TELUS, it's more than a telecommunications provider. So it's the largest telecom provider in Canada. And with that, you have lots of different areas of a business that you would expect that you might want to automate or improve, that AI is really having a big impact. So there's all of these different variety of use cases. And very often we've been able to look at something and say, oh, this is something where we can have really big impact. And sometimes that's actually generalizable to a lot of our customers as well.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it seems like a lot of the same challenges that people are going to have, the same sort of experience with growing with generative AI is something that you guys have a lot to then offer to the broader community.
I think that's probably fair. You go to experimentation, then you go to like production, right? So you think about that as another year, and then you go to scaling, right? And maybe scaling one and then a few. And then you start to get into things like security, trust, do you believe in it? Because once you scale it, you're like, oh, wait a second, what could go wrong? And then you get into this area of like financial optimization. And I feel like we're already at financial optimization. We hit that in sort of the second half of last year. And I find that most people are still doing a lot of the scaling.
Yeah.
And I think this year for most people, they're really going to start focusing on scaling broadly, but trust is going to be the big thing this year.
A lot of the people that I talk to are in that experimentation phase. They have some experience. They've been doing experimentation for several years, but there's almost this sense of kind of decision paralysis. There's so many things that could be done across the business.
Yeah, that's right.
So many different projects they can spin up. How do you think about at TELUS, or how do you advise your customers of where to actually begin?
So we did something very early on. I mean, a lot of people will be familiar with the different types of co-pilots or assistant versions that you can go out and allow the end user to start to do their own customization. We need to figure out a way to allow everybody to onboard themselves. And it has to be super easy because, it's a very broad, diverse workforce.
Sure.
And so they started creating what you would think of as a very early version of Copilots. We call it Fuel iX Copilots right now. And this other benefit is at the time, we wanted to run models in Canada, and like there weren't options because everything starts usually in the US and sometimes Europe and Canada later. So we did that. And I'll tell you that was one of the best decisions that was ever made. Because what it allowed them to do is when they rolled that out in July of that year, is over half of those requests went away because people were able to basically customize their own.
Yeah.
And so then you allowed people to get benefit right away. The people who knew their job and just wanted an easy way to basically do customization to like make their job better, share it with their team members, those types of things. And then also to identify the areas where, we need something additional. We need the additional integration, for example, or we need a little workflow process. And then that could go back into the AIA, the AI accelerator at TELUS, or that could, the TELUS Digital team could come in and actually implement something more significant. But essentially, the answer to your question is from the ground up. What we identified was, what did people really want to do? What did they see was important? Yeah. We allowed them to experiment to see how far they could get on their own. And then that became clear very quickly which ones needed more investment, where we get more value.
Bret, you mentioned earlier about an AI accelerator program. Can you tell me a little more about what that is inside TELUS?
Oh, yeah. that's actually one of the more important things I think that TELUS did early on. And a lot of people have like innovation groups.
Sure.
And this was very specifically set up originally for ML models because obviously telecom company, a lot of data. We're analyzing and very early adopters of using the data with AI in order to predict, make better decisions, those types of things. And when generative AI came along, it was very natural to expand that. And it actually grew to, I think, 100 engineers right now, data scientists and AI engineers. And they get deployed to help all of the different groups do their work. So if you've got 150 or 75, whatever, different business executives that want something done in their business, you go through this whole process and you say, okay, this is the one where we can actually give you some AI engineering help because you actually need it. And there's a good ROI there. And they've done tremendous work. What they've been able to do is come in and say, okay, given this business opportunity, what is it we need to do from AI engineering other than just plugging in an LLM and starting to type, right? And sometimes it's simple as prompt optimization. Sometimes it's extending applications so that they can, execute complex workflows. Sometimes it's integrating some data analytics with some other type of activity that they're doing with the LLM.
And how do you measure success for a team like that?
Everything's based on ROI, actually. So when you have more requests than you have capacity to fulfill, you always have to have some filter.
Yeah.
And so there have been a few things over time. Sometimes it's like, how complex is it? So how fast could you get the benefit? But every one of them actually is based on some benefit and a lot of cost savings, productivity benefits.
It's amazing. And are they all using Fuel iX to deliver some of those products?
Yeah, almost all of it. There's maybe some things that are slightly outside of that, but you have to understand when you think about what we did with Fuel iX, and that's iX stands for Intelligent Experiences, doesn't stand for 9, right? And that was just the way to think about it early on. We wanted to deliver intelligent experiences both to our employees and to our customers. And one of the first things we did is we basically created an AI gateway and control plane. And that had to do with the fact that we didn't have all of the models available in Canada and we wanted some flexibility there. And so, like, for example, all of the developers at TELUS and TELUS Digital, whether they're working internal or external for clients, they have access to like all the Bedrock models. And they can do it in a common way that we can have some control over around security. So in case there's an issue or if we want to monitor everything for observability and financial tracking, we have all of that. And then we have that flexibility so they can experiment. And I think that's one of the important things that people should see what the different models can do from time to time, because they do change. And the latest model comes out and everyone's like, why aren't you using that? And to be able to, within 24 hours have any new model available in the system, they can say, oh, okay, maybe it's better and we'll go to it. Or maybe it's better, but not better enough, right? Let's stay with what we're doing. And I think that that's been really important because if we think about a period of flux, right? And this is a incredible period of change, right? 3 months from now, you might need something completely different.
Oh, absolutely.
And so that was really important to us, I think, and has really been essential for us to move it forward. Now, you can build your own control plane. At this point, there's some out there in AI gateways that you could leverage, but I recommend everybody do that. And you plug into your hyperscaler, you go direct to the model makers, whatever it is, or host your own models if you have that opportunity. Think of something that we've been focused on a lot recently. So, most organizations are probably doing 50 billion, 100 billion, like large enterprises, maybe 200 billion tokens a year. We did 2 trillion AI tokens through our AI gateway.
Incredible.
And a lot of internal plus external, right? Growing really quickly. That was up from 50 billion the year before. And this quarter, we've already done another trillion tokens, right? And so we're on this really significant ramp. And so what happens when you have 100 billion tokens is you don't care about the price of tokens.
Sure. Yeah.
It's just not that big of a bill. But when you're doing 1 trillion tokens a quarter, sometimes the frontier models are more expensive than you actually want to pay.
Yeah.
And so we've just been going through this process over the last 6 months of taking some of our applications and putting them on lower cost models, which in many cases were the best models 6 months ago,
right,
but are now less expensive than some of the frontier models. And guess what? They're more than adequate for the task.
Yeah.
And, there's some things we've done where we just flip the switch and you save 2/3 overnight, right? And that's really important. And then there's other opportunities going forward to like post your own models and, and to do customization. And I do think that that's one of the things that I've also looked at from an AI gateway standpoint, flexibility, is that no customized model up through about a year ago could compete with a frontier model.
Yeah.
No matter how much tuning you did with it. Not true anymore. That a lot of the open source models that have come up are actually good enough that with fine tuning, they can actually be open source models for very specific tasks. So if you're able to do a little post training on them yourself, it makes a big difference. And then you have total control. And that's important for some use cases. I think every large enterprise is going to be running trillions of tokens because, as we talked about, when you're getting hundreds of millions of dollars annually in benefit, it just makes sense. You have to do it. It's funny. I was talking to a CTO last year of a major telecom company here in Europe, and it was a very stark moment for me because the previous year people would ask me about the technology, and he asked me this. He asked me only about adoption. How did you get so many people at TELUS and TELUS Digital to adopt it? And then I had 2 more conversations with CIOs like within a few weeks, and they had the same thing. And I think you really clued into it, this idea that adoption is actually more important than the technology. The technology for a long time was the limiting factor, but now it's actually the adoption and training. So how did we do that? So first of all, we really have focused on ease of use. And, we talk about this. We have, everything from what you would think of as traditional telecom executive to field service technicians to contact center employees in the Philippines and Central America. And they all come with different life experiences, different technical skills. And so the first thing was to give them comfort in doing that, to show them sort of short, really quick wins. And I will tell you that one of the serendipitous decisions that was made early on was, well, if someone on a team creates something, usually they're not the only person who performs that task. So we should just allow them to share it with their colleagues, so they can all work together. And what you find, it's obvious in retrospect, is that in every team, there are early adopters and there are late adopters, right? But if you look at it, the early adopters, as soon as you give them something, they're going to figure something out. And the late adopters, who do they trust? The person they work with, right? And so they get shared something, and then that person, and they're like, oh, and then we had training classes, and we had there was every month people had opportunity to learn, but then they started engaging. They became comfortable, and they started using it more. And I won't say we have 100% adoption, but I would say, from what I can tell, our adoption is probably 3x what most organizations are.
That's amazing. I do love the idea of giving people comfort with the technology and ease of use up front. Obviously very important to us in the Alexa world, and something that is radically better, radically improved experience with generative AI.
Yes.
And how do you think about balancing continuing to scale, continuing to grow the business with the needs of the end customer, with privacy or security concerns that both companies and consumers have about this technology, with a desire for speed and accelerating the business as much as possible? Like how do you balance that for your team?
Yeah, I think speed, value, and safety have always been things that we've really thought about. We really emphasized speed early on because we wanted to maximize innovation. We wanted to get it out in the hands. And I think, just to step back, we actually think a lot about AI and humanity, like AI to elevate human ingenuity and capability as opposed to AI to replace. And that's fine. Like AI does do this. You automate and you do things. And a lot of times that's great because it's stuff that you don't want the humans to do. But we really focused on that aspect, and we wanted them to have something that was easy to use, worked really well, could innovate quickly. And there's things that we started out which were better than what they had, and we scrapped those, and then we have new stuff, right? And so that's been really important. But on the safety side, we've really focused on that as well. TELUS, their data and trust office has really been out front in this, and they were in the previous era around data privacy, regulated telecom, probably not that surprising, right? With the ML work that we were doing in AI, and they were winning awards in 24 for responsible AI with generative AI, right? So they innovated a new purple teaming approach for safety, and it was all very manual. But we've taken that very seriously from the start, and it's very important because I think it is part of what we need for confidence in the systems. And so if you think about what drives confidence in a new technology, one is that it's like reliable, right? Cognitive trust. It does the same thing over and over again. Now, generative AI, we have a little bit of problem with that because of the probabilistic nature. Sometimes hallucinations, sometimes just things that are a little bit off and not really hallucinations. But so that's one aspect that a lot of people focus on. But the other thing is people don't want bad things to happen.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's like a bigger area of trust. And I think we all understand, like, you don't want PII exfiltration, right? But you also don't want your generative AI solution, either employee facing or externally facing, to like start spewing hate speech or start trying to do political manipulation of the user, right? You want it to be something that people feel comfortable with, that acts appropriately within the use case. And so we've been really focused on that a lot. And in some cases, that's probably why we've innovated so much in that space, because there was a big gap. A lot of people were doing like traditional security, and we said, we need security, plus we need this very broad spectrum of safety that we need to cover, that no testers or red teamers out there that we know actually know everything from like self-harm to political manipulation to all these other types of things. And so that's been really important for us to do that, so that when people sit down, they can be comfortable, the people who are sponsoring the technology can be comfortable, and they won't have that huge reputational hit that keeps them up at night. They all care about PII exfiltration because regulatory and like, doing right by your customers. So you have to do that. We also have to do all this other stuff. Yeah, that's been really important. I think that's given people confidence that they can use it safely. And then the other things we've done is we segment it so that there's certain types of workloads that never go to third parties, whether third-party model hosts or whatever.
Yeah, we've taken a similar sort of laser focus on the customer trust and overall security and privacy of the system, because we knew early on what generative AI could do for Alexa. We had the strong conviction that it would get us kind of to where we were, but we didn't want to sacrifice what made Alexa so special and what made tens of millions of people around the world rely on it every single day. We didn't want to risk breaking a customer's trust or letting them down, even though we knew there were all these potential benefits. And it's amazing to see the literally thousands of people that work on this day in, day out, and have been doing so for years at Alexa, to make sure, how do we ensure the spirit of Alexa, the personality characteristics, that it's friendly and helpful and trustworthy and factually accurate, that it still does all of those things and guarantees, as close as is perhaps technically possible, guarantees that it will do that every single time, regardless if it's me talking to it or my 4-year-old talking to it or my grandparents talking to it.
Well, and that's one of the things I actually think about in this space. We've been in long enough so we sort of understand the different waves. And I just talked about cognitive trust, like the same thing over and over again. But there's this other concept called affective trust, which is it like a personality? Is it more like from an emotional connection? Is it something that you expect and that you like? And, I think that's one of the things that actually makes Alexa different in our current era, because most of the new assistants that have come out are very generic.
Yeah.
You can try to manipulate them a little bit, but and you could have your own version of it, but it's not like someone Yeah. And I think that Alexa is very much like that for a lot of its users, because it has maintained that personality and that style. And, I will say on the security and trust side, it's actually been remarkable to me that Amazon has been so good at that.
Now, if you could go back 2 years ago when you started at TELUS and give yourself one piece of advice, what do you think it would be?
I think probably the two most important decisions we made that I would have liked to have made faster probably was just to 100% focus on ease of use and much more focus on flexibility in the backplane, being able to use different types of things. Because one of the things that we did, I think, very early on, which was good, is we gave people access to lots of models. And I think everybody using Bedrock would understand there's just no one model that solves all your problems.
Yeah.
A lot of people think
why we use dozens of models for Alexa Plus.
Exactly. And I think that you have to have access to different models because they have different needs. And there's certain times when you're just like, oh, we need to switch off of this model. It's too expensive, or we think there's an issue with it. And so I think that those were a couple of things. I guess the other thing I would have done is I would have started building our automated security solution for testing and monitoring of Gen AI systems, I would have started that earlier. We spent about 18 months doing research on that before we launched it, and we've got a lot of published papers, and it's quite unique. And we roll in, people have said, "Oh, I found 5 problems," and we run this thing for 2 hours, and we're like, "You have 416, right?" And they're like, "What?" Sometimes they don't like that, right? It's like, "Oh, I wish I didn't know that." And it's like, "Okay, but here's how you mitigate it." I guess I probably would have accelerated that because I think that 18 months we took maybe a more deliberative approach than we could have, and I could have had that at 9 months, and I think we would have been able to bring that to people a lot faster. Because if you look at TELUS, they have a regulated company. We have a lot of regulated, in particular, the ones I'm most concerned about. We have a lot of regulated customers as well, not just providing like telecom services, but IT services, lots of different things, contact center. And we introduce it to them now, and they're like, "This is amazing. What have I been doing?" And so that would be the other thing. And I think that a lot of people should look at that really closely this year, because there are ways to get around it. It seems like it's very daunting. There's not a lot of standards out there. There are some that you can play with, but I think it's something that you can address now, and everybody's going to be happier because you're getting all these benefits. I mean, we've got one for field service technicians where we rolled it out, and they take notes, and it automatically tells them whether it's a billable truck roll or not, or how to fix it, and all these things. I mean, it's been like it's a multi 8-figure annual revenue impact for our business, as well as a cost savings. And if you do that, but if it doesn't work, or if we've got, we were, I think, one of the very first companies to put generative AI behind a customer facing chatbot, if you think about it that way. And that helps so many people. They don't have to like call, right? If we could have done some of those things faster, but also been giving people the assurance that it was safe, I think we would have moved even faster.
So move faster, break more stuff, but ensure that you have a longer
test. And know what you're looking for.
Testing near and dear to my heart.
This is true. You've done a little of that.
And where do you think we're gonna go in the next 1 to 5 years? Where do you think the industry is going to be headed?
Well, I think there's 2 things. I think on the user side, I've never been a one assistant person. I think people are going to have multiple assistants.
I agree. I think that's the best for consumers.
On the enterprise side, I think we're going through a period over the next 5 years of like making humans better, allowing them to augment their capabilities. So I think all those things are going to happen, but probably the most revolutionary thing that's going to happen over the next couple of years is the new agent-based coding solutions are just going to change everything. I mean, we're doing things now in 4 weeks that used to take 6-7 months.
It's amazing.
Rolling out like enterprise-grade app for content moderation in a very short period of time, and it is truly remarkable. They work well. There's the code review is better. The security is better. So I think that's really going to change how people in the enterprise use this, and then be able to provide the AI-enabled services through that really help everybody, hopefully accelerate or eliminate the mundane tasks and really focus on the stuff that we want humans to do, which require empathy and complex thought.
Fantastic. Bret, thank you so much for joining.
Emerson, thanks a lot for having me.